A word of caution, milady. Snap of my fingers and you'll be back on the block where I found you.
And with the flick of my wrist, I could change your religion.
You're very persuasive. For a moment, I forgot that your lovers have a tendency to end up dead.
Love has its risks.
You're under arrest.
5 of them, 3 of us. Hardly seems fair.
Maybe we should give him a chance to surrender.
Excuse me, but there's 4 of us.
Athos, Porthos, and Aramis.
Hello.
Nice to meet you again.
Pleasure.
Now, we are prepared to resist you. Walt Disney Pictures presents the story of the greatest heroes who ever lived.
Long live the Musketeers!
It was a time when danger was irresistible.
Did I miss anyone?
King's life is in danger. We have work to do.
1,000 gold pieces on each of their heads, dead or alive.
I prefer...
Kill him!
dead.
Adventure was everywhere.
I hope we're not interrupting.
Kill those musketeers.
Campaign?
We're in the middle of a chase, Porthos.
And friendship
You're right. Something red.
was the greatest weapon of all.
All for one, and more for me.
Charlie Sheen,
We must pray for our sins. Second thought, God's often busy.
Kiefer Sutherland,
Save the king!
Chris O'Donnell,
I'm on a mission for the king.
I've heard that before.
Oliver Platt, That's it. Next time you drive. Tim Curry,
Snap of my fingers, and you could be back on the block where I found you.
and Rebecca De Mornay.
And with a flick of my wrist, I could change your religion.
The Three Musketeers.
Welcome to Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network. On Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our fan favorite movies, those hidden gems, cult classics, guilty pleasures, box office winners, and failures. When this movie comes on your TV, you love what you're watching so much, you're not getting off that couch. And that is a definition of what our show is all about. I'm Kevin, your host for this special Couch Potato Theater. And we here at the Fandom Podcast Network are proud to celebrate the 1993 movie, The Three Musketeers. And I'd like to introduce my co-host for this Couch Potato Theater. All for one and one for all. Kyle Wagner, will you join me?
As long as I can stay 6 feet away from Hayley, we're all good. And I don't mean it as a COVID thing. I like my religion just how it is.
Because you're saying she's good with a dagger, right?
I've seen what she can do with a paper cutter, so...
Hayley, will you join us for this wonderful look back on 1993, The Three Musketeers?
I would be honored to join your motley crew and go on this fun stakes adventure.
Nice. We're really excited about this. And thank you guys all for joining us here. But before we move on, I want to let our listeners know how they can find us here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Kyle, would you please do us the favor?
I think I can handle that. I think I might be able to handle the rapier just a little better, but it's close. But you can find the Fandom Podcast Network, of course, on fpnet.podbean.com, which is our master feed. You can also go to the Podbean app and access the master feed by searching Fandom Podcast Network. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, the new Google Podcasts app, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and now as well Tuned In, which is Amazon's podcasting system, which is tied in with Alexa.
So, yeah, that's a new thing now, Kyle. You got us on those. So, first of all, should we just say most podcast catchers now?
I'm working on one more that's pretty big, so let's see what happens there. So,
well done, man. Well done.
And we will. I'm just going to say now that pretty soon there will be another place you can find the Fandom Podcast Network, but we're not spoiling that quite yet.
Yes.
Of course, too, you can visit our Facebook page, Fandom Podcast Network. If you want to contact us directly, you can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. On Instagram, you can follow us on Fandom Podcast Network or on Twitter at FanPod Network. I'm Kyle, one of the co-founders here at the network. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom. And of course, the other co-founder is Mr. Reitzel. Mr. Reitzel, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix.
And while Kevin and I may be the co-founders, the person who really runs things around here is Miss Hayley, because trust me, we keep her happy. We're blades, phaser blasts. It's just she has too many weapons. So Hayley, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter. I am at Trekkie01D. I'm also a lurker in our awesome Facebook group.
Also, Kyle, I just started a new Facebook group. It's called the Manly Art of Wenching, so you can make sure you check that out.
Oh well, I'm assuming you're following the rules of Porthos and not Aramis.
Yes, depending on the night, I will either say wonderful poetry or I'll just plant that manly kiss.
Yep, there you go. And of course, too, there are two ways to support the Fandom.
Hold on, wait, did you hear that? I just heard Hayley's eyes roll like 3 times. Did you hear that?
I think they're actually spinning at this point. Kevin, you might want to back away just a little bit. I'm just saying for your own safety. There's a couple great ways to support the Fandom Podcast Network. First of all, go to our TeePublic store at teepublic.com, where you can find the gear of all the great shows of the Fandom Podcast Network, whether it be t-shirts, pillows, hoodies, masks. We like to make sure you guys are protected. COVID hasn't gone away yet, so we like to make sure you're protected. And there's a lot of other great things there. And of course, anything that sales that happen there go right back into the podcast, so we can continue to keep the lights on around here. But two, we also love reviews, especially on iTunes for you PC users or Apple Podcasts for Mac users. We love those 5-star reviews, obviously, but we love any reviews in general because it helps us get a little more noticed out there. Plus, we love the feedback because it always helps us to create these better podcasts to feed your ears. Now, Kevin, I'm going to go mess with some ladies in waiting. Will you take things over for me now?
I will do. Thank you so much, Kyle. Appreciate that very much. And I want to welcome again everyone to Couch Potato Theater. And, I know that when we were doing a previous podcast at Couch Potato Theater, Hayley, we kind of brought this up and we were like, yeah, we got to do some Three Musketeers from 1993.
Yes. Yeah. I love this movie so much. And it's just, it's so good. So
it
good.
had so many ingredients working for it. First of all, Disney. Okay. Disney movies were really making a big, huge comeback again in the 90s.
Especially the live action Disney side of it.
Yes, the live action, yes. We had, of course, a very good-looking cast that was also very popular. We had some established actors that, of course, we've loved from other movies coming in here as well. But also the cherry on top, we had the hit song and the wonderful score as well. We're going to get into that in a moment. Three Musketeers, 1993. The three best of the disbanded Musketeers, Athos, Kiefer Sutherland, Porthos, Oliver Platt, Aramis, Charlie Sheen, join a young, hot-headed would-be Musketeer, D'Artagnan, Chris O'Donnell, to stop Cardinal Richelieu. How do you say that, Kyle? Richelieu. Played by the one and only Tim Curry. The evil plot to form an alliance with enemy England on the way of the mysterious Countess de Winter, played by Rebecca de Mornay. Rochefort, the evil Michael Wincott, the Cardinal's right-hand man, announces the official disbanding of the King's Musketeers. Three, however, refuse to throw down their swords. Athos, the fighter, the drinker, Porthos, the pirate and the lover, and Aramis, the priest and poet. Arriving in Paris to join the Musketeers, D'Artagnan uncovers the Cardinal's plans, and the four set out on a mission to protect King Louis and France.
Kevin, I just want to give you massive props because he should always be said as the evil Michael Wincott because he is never good in any movie.
We will get to that. The Three Musketeers came out in 1993. It's the film classic story, of course, from Walt Disney Pictures and Caravan Pictures, directed by Stephen Herrick from a screenplay by David Lowery. It is the first movie produced by Caravan Pictures. The film is based on the novel The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas, and it was held after medieval times when King Arthur died. Differences between the novel and the film, there's a lot. Of course, that's a conversation that will come up. The adaptation greatly simplifies and alters the story and takes considerable liberties with the French history, not to mention French accents. The relationship between Athos and Milady de Winter is altered to make the two characters more sympathetic. In the book, Milady just marries Athos to gain a fortune. When he finds about her fleur de lis, he hangs her from a tree and leaves her for dead. She survives and escapes, plotting revenge on Athos. In the film, Milady actually loves Athos. When he finds out that she is a criminal, he banishes her from the land, but later realizes his mistake. After being cast out by Athos, Milady becomes an evil person in the novel. Her role in the film is a good deal more sympathetic. She helps the Musketeers by giving them the information they need just before she commits suicide by jumping off the cliff. Now, Hayley, one of the things that we like to talk about here on Couch Potato Theater is the posters. Now, in the 90s, there was a very popular thing that we've all talked about where you have the full cast. They all had to be, top billed cast had to be in the poster usually. And usually you had whoever was like the lead star will get front and center. And then like on each shoulder, you'd see like 2 or 3 more of the other co-stars. And of course, we have the famous one here, the Three Musketeers, with Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland, Chris O'Donnell, Oliver Platt, Tim Curry, and Rebecca De Mornay, with Kiefer Sutherland front and center. I'm guessing at this time he was the top billed star. And Hayley, can you cool yourself down a little bit? I think you're getting a little flushed there. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, this poster was hot. It still is hot. Like, it's hot. I'm hot. It's hot. We're just all hot. I loved this poster. I remember it. And I think it's a fantastic poster. You know, it's got enough of a teaser to it because it says a place of betrayal, the fate of a king, a time for heroes. And then down at the bottom where it's got the Three Musketeers, it has 3, it's got Athos, Porthos, and Aramis' sword. So it's a fantastic poster. I know that some people are like, oh, it's too busy and too much with having to have all the actors on the poster, or at least the main set of actors. I think it works in this one. It's fantastic.
Okay, Kyle, while Hayley goes off and throws some water on her face here, I want to get your thought on this poster.
I know, Kevin, we both had the same pet peeve about a lot of 90s posters, but however, this one actually works.
It does. Agree.
I think it's one, they just all look like they're in character for this, and it's just not a face shot of that. And I love the fading around them. And I think it's perfectly balanced with how they do the Three Musketeers logo with the 3 swords crossed on the bottom. And it's a perfect layout instead of like one of these like montages where you have faces just all over the place. It's tight. It works good. And because of the people in this movie at the time, I think it gives pretty much everybody in there who's a fairly legitimate name some credit. And I like that as well.
I think what's great is, you've got Tim Curry as Cardinal Richelieu on the one side in the very back. And then you've got Rebecca De Mornay, Milady de Winter in the back. And they're both kind of really the evil, devious characters of this film. And so
they're looking it too.
Yeah. And they look it, but then they're also in the background. So the lighting on them is just a little bit less than everybody else. And so it lends that characterization of who they are in this film and just adds to it. I will say, however, I have to correct you, Kevin. It's Alexander Dumas. Like Illinois, the S is silent.
Thank you. Appreciate
You're welcome.
That. Alexander Dumas. So the other one that's also very popular also happens to be on my original DVD here. Of course, a lot of those Disney DVDs that came out, and the DVD case was white, and then they had the slip cover of the DVD around it and stuff. Sometimes they release different colors. But this is the one where we get the 4 Musketeers, and they're crossing swords at the bottom there. It says 3 Musketeers on the top. All for One, One for All. And then you get, of course, a couple of well-known people putting, how they would put like quotes from famous and prominent critics. And of course, we had Jeffrey Lyons from Sneak Preview. He says, loads of fun. And then ABC TV said, nonstop action adventure. Okay, cool. Which one do you prefer, Hayley?
I prefer the darker one. I have the same DVD as you, and I like it. Like, it's still really nice. You've got the French countryside, or alleged French countryside, knowing that this was filmed mostly in Austria. So you have the Austrian countryside in the background. So I like it because they're still in character. But I think the other one, at least as far as movie poster, if they had released this one as a movie poster, I don't know how well that would have lended to the film. I think the other one works better. But as a DVD cover, it works great.
Oh. What about you, Kyle?
I think I agree with Hayley on this. I actually enjoy the kind of the headshots of the first one as the movie poster, but I agree. I think the second poster works so much better as a DVD cover. I think it fits better for marketing on the DVD and such, but I think actually as far as being the straight up movie poster, the one with just their headshots is actually a better movie poster in this case.
Yeah. We got some movie taglines. We'll talk about those. First one is, they're scoundrels, playboys, outlaws, the greatest heroes who ever lived. And of course, we have the famous All for One and One for All. And then the other one we have is a place of betrayal, the fate of a king, a time for heroes. Some of them are kind of cheesy, but I like the scoundrels, playboys, outlaws, and greatest heroes. I like that. I think that's a good one. So personal notes here, guys, of when and where we first saw this. What kind of impact of it? Where were you, Hayley?
So gosh, I don't know if I saw this in the movie theater because I was 11 at the time. There's a good possibility I went to the movie theater and saw this with my parents. If not, more than likely, I rented it from Blockbuster, by golly, when it came out. And I liked it. I've always liked it. It's always been there. If it was ever on TV, it's one of those I'd stop and watch it kind of thing. My kid likes it. We were just watching it before recording tonight, and she goes, "You know a lot of the lines," and I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And I'm like, I don't think I've watched this like as much as like other films that we've talked about on Couch Potato Theater, but I do know a lot of the lines and I remember it, and I always really enjoyed it. And I always liked Kiefer Sutherland's character. I know that probably for the age I was, I should have really been hard on for D'Artagnan, but I actually liked Athos a lot more, and I still do.
What did your daughter think of it?
She liked it. I think I tried to show it to her. Gosh, I don't know when I showed it. It's been a couple years since I showed it to her, but I'm sure I probably tried when she was a little bit younger, and she just wasn't really interested. But when she watched it the second time, she enjoys it and she likes it. She'll put it on periodically. So
that's cool. Kyle, where were you?
I had just graduated high school. I was still in Alaska, and I went to the theater and saw this because the cast alone sold me on it.
Yeah.
And I came out of this movie. It was so much fun, and I know there's probably better dramatical versions of this film, but this is my favorite version because of how fun it is. I know it's not as accurate to the book as other movie versions of this have been, but if I'm going to watch the Three Musketeers as a movie, quote movie, and I think Hayley knows where I'm going with this. As a movie, I'm going to watch this, but there is one other version of the Musketeers that I think is just as good as this, and that is the BBC version of the Musketeers from a few years ago, where Peter Capaldi played Cardinal Richelieu. And that, if you have not,
I bet he was good.
Him and Tim Curry are running neck and neck. I'm not going to lie.
Well, and they stuck to the story with Athos and hanging his wife. So that's in that series, which I think is great.
And of course, if you're a Picard fan, there's another reason to watch. Hayley knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I saw this in a theater. I believe I was 22 years old. And I was all about seeing this film. I never read the original book. I had heard of the Three Musketeers. I'm sure I've seen some version of it on television that my parents were watching, whether it was, black and white or something, but didn't really jump out at to me as a story I'd really want to go out and see. But when you see a film like this that had several stars that I was very curious about and very familiar with, I was all over this. And I went with some friends of mine to go to the local theater, and we saw it, had a great time, loved it. May have seen it more than once. Of course, when it came out on VHS, I was all over that as well. I've seen several interpretations of this film. I know I've seen parts of it on television with other productions. This is my favorite. And I love the filming locations. It's just the cast, too, just is phenomenal. Just phenomenal, So, guys. Oh, Hayley, yes.
So I have one other thing to input. So my boyfriend, Zach, this was the movie he saw on his first date in high school.
Wow. That's a good date. That's a good date movie.
Right? Yeah. I think so, too. I think it's great.
Favorite scenes. Let's talk about our favorite scenes. There's so much to choose from. And I also say if you want to throw out your favorite quotes along with the scenes as well, we can kind of combine both of these. But this movie just has so much in there. And Kyle, I'm going to go to you first. What are some of your favorite scenes and or maybe quotes?
Any scene with Oliver Platt as Porthos, because that's also where the best quotes of the movie come from. Like, cannonballs. I hate cannonballs. Ugly. Big ugly. There's that. Actually, one of my favorite scenes, though, is the scene where they've just escaped and rescued D'Artagnan, and they're in the pub. And first, D'Artagnan's kind of hanging out with Aramis and Porthos, and Aramis and Porthos try to kind of teach him the ways to woo the ladies. But then he goes over to Athos and we learn the story of Athos and Lady de Winter. And of course, D'Artagnan doesn't know about everything at this time, but I think that's just a really great scene. And then he gets crashed by Porthos, who then gets immediately knocked cold by Athos. Two, I love the scene right after D'Artagnan is discovered by Michael Wincott's character, and he's talking about his father, and the Cardinal kind of looks at him and goes like,
yes,
and Wincott kind of points
the scar on his eye, yes,
yeah, and I just thought that was a great little touch. And I think the most evil scene Tim Curry has in this movie is there's a scene where the Queen, played by Gabrielle Anwar in this film, is just coming out of the bath, and he basically sneaks up on her.
Creepy.
That is the most evil scene in this movie by far. But I mean, really, the whole movie is just so much fun. There's not really any bad scenes for me in it, but I want to make sure you guys have a chance to pick some scenes too. Kaylee, what are some of your favorites?
Oh, gosh. I mean, there's so many to choose from just because. I do have to say, I love everything. Oliver Platt is great, but I think Tim Curry has some really fantastic lines in this film as well. And so anytime he's on screen, it's very much a love to hate this character kind of thing. I love the end scene where, or not the end scene, I should say, but towards the end, when Aramis is on the boat and he uncovers his hood and, he's talking to Richelieu and he's saying, you're never going to harm anybody ever again. And he goes and he's like, wait, stop. And then King Louis throws the punch. And anytime that he stands up for himself, Queen Anne she's just like, yes, thank you. Like, earlier in the film when Richelieu's talking to her and creeping her out, and Louis comes in and he stands up to Cardinal Richelieu and he says, no, I wanted to tell them goodbye, and that was my job to do that. You had no right. You can tell that she's, feels very empowered, that he's feeling empowered and standing up for himself. But quotes. There's just so many. I
want them dead or alive.
I prefer
mostly dead. I prefer dead.
Like He's just so devious. The first thing he says is it's just like one less mouth to feed, and you're just like, oh dang, he is not playing around.
No, one of the best moments though, excuse me, Kelly, is when the Queen says, "I'd rather die," and then he kicks over the footstool. That can be arranged.
I love when when he's talking to D'Artagnan and he goes, "You might have made a fine musketeer, but now we'll never know. Will we?" And he just throws that little bit of attitude in there. And I think that's fantastic. And then, of course, his very famous one, "All for one and more for me." And I've come to really enjoy his character just so much. And Tim Curry plays it so well. He's got that laugh. Anytime he does laugh, it's just so devious. But one other thing is when D'Artagnan is with Lady de Winter and they're staying at that house before they go to the boat. And she realized, you can tell he's so naive and he hasn't quite learned what to keep secret and who to say things to. He has no idea who this woman is. And he's telling her everything because he's just so enthralled. And they're fighting, and she pulls a dagger from her hair, and I'm like, man, Lady de Winter coming in with the hair clip dagger.
There's one other great Tim Curry line too, when he's talking to Lady de Winter, and she calls him Your Majesty. He's like, I like the sound of that.
Yeah,
and it's Tim Curry. It's just how he says it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I like the fight scenes in this movie overall are actually quite impressive, and they hold up as well. One of my favorites is one of the, where D'Artagnan, first of all, he meets, Kiefer, Athos, and, in the old, what used to be the Three Musketeers building, and challenges him to a duel. And then, of course, he meets up with Porthos, and there's the great, this is my sash from the Queen of America, There's no queen, and then, of course, makes the duel with him, and then meets Charlie Sheen with Aramis. And so I like how they're all kind of getting ready to have a duel, but then, it's like they meet up. They say, wait a minute, I've got a duel. So not till 1 o'clock. I've got a duel, not till 2 o'clock. And they all kind of look at each other. And you can tell at the time, too, that Kiefer's Athos admires the kid, and he's ready to teach him a lesson. You don't get the feeling he's going to kill him. But then, of course, you get the Cardinal's men arriving, and there's that great fight scene there. And I like that fight scene because you learn a little bit about all of them through their fights and the way that they fight. Charlie Sheen does that cool thing where he takes one guard and pulls him behind him, and the other one he fights, and then he waits for both of them to thrust, and he moves out of the way, and they stab each other. But then, of course, you get Porthos, who's fighting the one guy. He's got that cool knife thing that he grabs a sword and he breaks it, and the guy's running away, and he takes it. What is it? Those bolos?
Yeah,
those
the
things
bolo.
you throw, and then he goes and he successfully throws him and knocks him out, and he goes, "I love my job," And that just kind of sets up the whole tone of the film, and I really, really enjoy that. The other scene that I really love, I alluded to it earlier, is the bar scene. And this is where you're starting to see Porthos, Oliver Platt, kind of take over the film. He almost feels like he's the leader, but just because he has all the best lines. And I love how he says, we must teach you the manly art of wenching, and he talks about the art of the kiss. And it says a lot about you on your first kiss and how you do it. And then, of course, he says, no time for words. And then, of course, Charlie Sheen's Aramis is like, I beg to differ. And he does that wonderful poem, and the girl swoons. And then D'Artagnan tries to get a little mixture of both. He's just, I'm just going to kiss her. And then he's a natural. But, even the end fight scene, too, with when you see D'Artagnan fight the sniper guy, that's a great scene. And then you see the rest of the Three Musketeers come to the aid. Just a really, really fun scene. And just a lot of great quotes. I mean, we'll go over that later. A lot of people commented on the thread that I made on social media with all these wonderful quotes and such. So, okay, this is always kind of fun. It's a new segment here to the Couch Potato Theater. Who is your movie crush? Who is your movie crush? Who was it originally, I'm going to ask. and who is it now? Has it changed? Hayley, I'm going to start with you.
So I kind of already said this, but I'm sure I had a little bit of a movie crush on D'Artagnan because, I'm not going to lie, Batman Forever, and he was Robin. But it's definitely Athos.
Athos. Okay.
Yeah.
That's Kiefer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kiefer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to remember. Kiefer, and then Aramis is Sheen. Yeah, gotcha. Has it always... So is it consistently...
yeah, pretty much.
Kyle, who is your movie crush?
Okay, so Rebecca De Mornay is always going to win. That's just a thing for me. But I have also had a very soft spot in my heart forever for Gabrielle Anwar. And especially at this period in her career when she was the girl that Chris O'Donnell danced with in Son of a Woman. This movie, and then she did a romantic comedy with Michael J. Fox called For Love or Money. And
yes,
when in this kind of period, she is just adorable. And she's, I kind of, when she did Bird Notice, I kind of changed the way I perceived her. But when she's in this phase of her career, she's just absolutely adorable. And I'm, as Jennifer Walks would just say, it's adorable.
I think consistently, it's always been Gabrielle Anwar because she had a nice little run here. Of course, she did Scent of a Woman, she did Body Snatchers, she did a stint on Beverly Hills 90210, and then she did this film. Of course, as you mentioned, For the Love of Money. But I first saw her in 1991 where she played Mariska in If Looks Could Kill, co-starring Richard Grieco, which was kind of a young James Bond parody type of ripoff thing, and she was just so cute in that thing. And I've always liked her as well. So, all right. Okay, guys, I want to talk about the director, Stephen Herek. He had quite a bit of run from some popular films in the 90s. He also has produced a lot of stuff. He's got his hands in a lot in the movie industry. He started out more known with the horror film Critters in 1986. He did Mr. Holland's Opus in 95.
Love that movie.
Yes. We did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in 89. 101 Dalmatians in 96. Not so good movie Holy Man in 98. Remember, did you ever see Holy Man, Kyle?
I think I did, but it's been a very long time.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy, not good film.
Yeah.
Of course, he does one of my favorites here, Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg in 2001. Life or Something Like It, Angelina Jolie film in 2002, and Tommy Lee Jones film Man in the House in 2005. He's been very busy lately, though. Recently, he's been working on the MacGyver reboot TV series, which I think it's in like his third or fourth season now. And he was he's the co-producer there. He's worked on Hawaii Five-0. He's done a lot of episodic television, a few stints of director as well. But I have a friend of mine that actually works on the MacGyver TV series behind the scenes. And I asked this person, I'm going to keep them anonymous, but I was kind of curious, what was your experience working with Stephen Herek? And this person said he was one of our producers for the MacGyver TV series for a good while. I can't make any comments due to the NDA and CBS rules, but he was very nice to me and he worked on every movie from that era, had plenty of good stories to tell. I wish he could tell you more, but they are very strict, especially now with the whole Lenkov fiasco. And if you guys don't know, Lenkov was one of the main producers of this series. And he got in a little trouble because he created a hostile work environment and he got fired for doing some stuff.
Yeah. Basically, he pretty much about mentally broke the star of MacGyver, Lucas Till.
Yeah. So anyway, but besides that, though, regarding Stephen Herek, firsthand, a friend of mine said that they really like this guy and he's a cool dude. So, of course, this movie couldn't have been made without Alexander Dumas. Hayley, did you ever read the original book?
I think I did, but it's been quite a while since I've read it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, he's had several iterations of Three Musketeers, of several of his books, including The Count of Monte Cristo. And I picked three films that stand out other than, the one that we're talking about. We've got Three Musketeers in 2011. We also have The Count of Monte Cristo in 2002 and The Man in the Iron Mask in 1998, which I believe was Leonardo DiCaprio's next film after Titanic. I remember seeing that in a theater. I was underwhelmed by it, and I have never seen it since. I feel like I should go back and revisit it, but The Count of Monte Cristo is one of those films I remember seeing, and I absolutely love this film. I love it every more than I see it. The 2011 Three Musketeers I found enjoyable. Hayley, have you seen all these films?
I've only seen bits of The Man in the Iron Mask. I do remember seeing The Count of Monte Cristo, and I really enjoyed that. Definitely need to watch that again. And I didn't even know they made another Three Musketeers movie, 2011. Just goes to show you how much I have not followed movies as of late. So
yeah, it was pretty fun. Luke Evans was in there. We had Mila Jovovich as well. Christian Oliver, Ray Stevenson. And Orlando Bloom, of course, he was in there as well. And it was a good cast. Kyle, what do you think about these other three films? Are you fans of these iterations of Alexander's work?
Man in the Iron Mask is decent. Count of Monte Cristo kind of grew on me.
Same here.
However, Kevin, to bring up the Paul W.S. Anderson version of The Three Musketeers is blasphemous. That movie is terrible. This is the one that they were like in airships in this film. They had blimps. And,
that's right. I forgot about that. I only saw it once, but I enjoyed it.
It's way, way out there. If you're going to go a version of The Three Musketeers outside of the Disney one, you got to go back to the 1973 version of Three Musketeers, where Oliver Reed played Athos, Raquel Welch was Constance de Bourdaloue, Richard Chamberlain was Aramis, and you had Christopher Lee as Rochefort in that film as well.
Ooh.
So if you're
I may have seen that when I was younger, but I don't remember it.
If you're going to go with a different version other than the Disney version, Charleston Heston was the Cardinal in that film.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Faye Dunaway was also in that film as well. That's the version you need to go with.
So you're not
I'm
a fan
intrigued
of this
by
2011
the 48
No.
version. I think that one would be really neat to see. That was like the first time a really big production film of the Three Musketeers had been made with Gene Kelly, Lana Turner.
Popular Alexander Dumas, popular guy though. Obviously, he lived between 1802 and 1870. Okay, guys, let's talk about the cast here. As I was rewatching this, and I remember this the last time that I watched this, let's just be honest here. Oliver Platt steals this film when it comes to the good guys here. I mean, he wasn't really supposed to. He wasn't like the draw, but he comes. I think he was supposed to be the comic relief when they kind of categorized people, because you had the handsome Charlie Sheen and the handsome Kiefer Sutherland, and of course the young handsome Chris O'Donnell. Oliver Platt, debatable. But man, I was rewatching this going, he just kills every scene. He also has the way he delivers these things too, and the way that he acts, he feels like he's in charge, even though we feel like Kiefer Sutherland obviously is the person that's in charge here is Athos. What do you guys think? Hayley?
I can see that. I think that everybody gets a good portion of screen time. So I don't know necessarily if I would say that anybody really steals it for me, just because they do all get plenty of screen time as far as Athos, Porthos, Aramis, Cardinal Richelieu, D'Artagnan. I think they all have well-rounded amount of time. And I mean, Oliver Platt's great. He's funny. I think it's, but then they're all kind of funny in their own way too. So,
yeah. What about you, Kyle?
So I have a theory on this, and Hayley might have just proved it for me. For the guys, Oliver Platt steals this movie, because Oliver Platt is basically what every guy wants to be in this film.
Yeah,
I
For
can
the
see
ladies,
that.
Ex-pirate, womanizer.
I mean, the scene, Porthos the pirate, and they all jump off ship. But I mean, and he's just got so many great fun lines that fit with the style of this movie. Him and Tim Curry really do. This is, as far as the charisma of this film, they are it. I mean, they carry all the best lines. They have the great execution. But I'm going to say this too. I'm a big fan of Keith Sutherland in this film. This is one of my favorite roles for him. Charlie Sheen is actually very entertaining. Nobody's bad in this movie. But there's something about how Keith portrays himself in this film that just works so well. I mean, he just, the weight he carries his athos just works incredibly well in this film.
I almost wonder, and I should have asked him when I met him last year, if he felt that this role was more in line with who he is, because he's actually really soft-spoken. He's very nice. You know, most people think of Kiefer Sutherland, they think of 24, and, you know, he's kind of this harsh, big, you know, macho kind of dude and really tough and rough. And he's really actually very nice. It's a very nice person.
I want to give you guys a chance to, if there's any other people in the cast that jumped out at you as well. I like Kyle, the way you said it, everyone's really good in this. Julie Delpy, I just thought she was cute. You know, I thought she was great in this. And of course, I love her trilogy of films she did with Ethan Hawke over 10, 20 years. You know, the Before Sunset, Before Sunrise, or the Richard Linklater films. Love those. Those are just phenomenal. Also a huge fan of the baddie in this film, other than Tim Curry, and that's Michael Wincott. He's got a certain voice about him, growly, and boy, does he know how to play bad guys. And he had quite a little bit of a run here. He was in talk radio. Of course, he was in The Doors. Then he does Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves as Guy Gisborne, bad guy, of course, in 91. 1492, he was in that. Romeo is Bleeding. The Three Musketeers, of course, in this one he plays bad guy. And right after this, he goes into The Crow, plays top dollar, bad guy. Not so good guy too in Strange Days. And then, of course, in the Count of Monte Cristo, he plays a really good bad guy, Dorliac. So those are a couple of my other highlights. What about you, Kyle?
Obviously, the first place I'm going to go with him is The Crow. I mean, that's just... But he's phenomenal in this. He Count of Monte Cristo, he's phenomenal. He was actually quite good in Alien Resurrection, too.
Oh, that's right. He was good in that. I remember that, yeah.
He's just, like I said, he's just got the bad guy voice, first and foremost. I mean, when he speaks, it's just like, yep, he's the bad guy. He's phenomenal in this, and he's just slimy enough, you know, but he still has a feeling of menacing to him. A couple other things I got to say. If there's one role that really I just always have a hard time with that, this is Hugh O'Connor as King Louis, because you just want to just shake the kid and just say, will you get your head out of your butt?
I just want to give him a better haircut.
Yeah.
But I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the Doctor Who connection in this with Paul McGann playing Gerard in this film. It's a very silly role and really overdone. Really overdone for the way this movie feels in it, but you got
I'm fighting for the honor of my sister. Run! Kyle or Hayley, did you have any other comments on the cast?
You know, I always liked Constance. I always enjoyed her character. I do wish, you know, we had gotten a bit more with King Louis and Queen Anne. I think their characters, you know, I would have loved to have just a little bit more interactions with them. But I get why, you know, because when we first see Queen Anne, she's talking about how the king's distant and just seems awkward with her and, you know, arranged marriages. But, you know, it's just another role where if they had tried to pick somebody else besides Tim Curry to play the Cardinal, I don't think it would have worked. I can't.
He was perfectly cast.
I cannot picture anybody else doing it. And, you know, I just love the man.
Kevin, real quick, I just want to say too, as the gentleman in the room, nobody might play a better seductress than Rebecca De Mornay.
Yeah,
there was a lot of cleavage in this movie for a Disney movie.
How many of us had the hope of waking up like Chris O'Donnell woke up in this film?
Yeah, risky business. Yeah, lots of stuff here. So, but I would be remiss if I had not mentioned one person in this movie especially with my fellow co-host of Blood of Kings, a Highlander podcast. The fencing instructor is Bob Anderson, world famous movie swordsman, sword master. He's worked on countless films. He went uncredited in this. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that he did went uncredited. Nowadays, though, someone in his role like that is. And so it was nice that he got in front of the camera briefly, but he worked on Star Wars and all these other films. He actually was inside the suit of Vader for a little while as well, doing some of his scenes. But I think it was more like Empire Strikes Back, if I remember correctly. But anyway, he's worked on countless stuff. And we actually did an episode on Bob Anderson on Blood of Kings a few episodes ago. So if you want to learn more about that, check that out. So the movie was about an hour and 45 minutes. It was released on November 12th, 1993 with a PG rating, a budget around $30 million. Opening weekend was a little over 10. The USA gross and worldwide gross was just a little over $53 million. Received some critical responses here. Rotten Tomatoes, the film finds an approval rating of 28% based on 29 reviews, with an average rating of 4.78 out of 10. Says that it's a starry trio of do-gooders may promise to fight one for all and all for one, but the Three Musketeers is a slickly unmemorable update bound to satisfy very few. Wrong! Hayley, you're shaking your head. This is why we're not fans of Rotten Tomatoes, but we're always curious what they say.
I get it. Everybody's got their own thing, and sometimes I'm guilty of this. I sometimes do not like remakes of a film. I'd rather just watch the original, or maybe the second version of a film. But Rotten Tomatoes, you're just wrong.
Now, our buddy Roger Ebert, he's hit or miss in my mind as well. He says, all I can testify is I didn't much care. The movie was behavior, not acting. Nobody on either side of the camera seems to take the story and the characters seriously. Yes, I know it's basically a comic adventure, but even so, look at the Bond pictures, which have the courage of their lack of conviction. Of the Musketeers, the one who was convincing was Oliver Platt's Porthos. The others, who can all be fine actors in the right role, didn't seem comfortable in the period costumes, the action, or the story. Now, I want to mention this, guys. When you go see a film like this, kind of like when you went to go see Prince of Thieves, you're not going to get the best, accents, but you go there to see the stars in these roles. So you have to kind of be forgiving about that. If you're going to expect a strict interpretation of the book, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. Hayley, did you go into the movie with that in mind? Do you remember that?
No. So I hadn't, at this point, I don't think I'd read the book. It was later in high school when I went back and read the book. But I truly try to say, okay, here's a book. And a movie's got to interpret it in how they want to. Obviously, not everything can be in it. I mean, gosh, I've read the Harry Potter books and seen all the movies, and not everything's in those. And so to sit there and criticize and say that, a movie sucks because it's not true to the book or vice versa, it's just, I get it, but at the same time, it's really kind of ridiculous. Because it's a movie interpretation. It's not going to be, unless they say, this movie is exactly how it is in the book.
Kyle, I've noticed that a lot, that people will compare the books to the movies, and it's going to be done till the end of time, basically, when they pull from books. And you and I have, been tried to be on the fence about things, and not, if the book's really, really good, not expect the movie to be exactly like it. Hopefully the book can also give us something new. The movie can give us something new that the book didn't. What about you?
Okay, so when I went into this, first of all, the fact that Disney was making this, I just ruled out it being. It was going to be a rough draft version of the actual book. It was going to be the Disney-fied version of the book, and I was fine with that because and especially with the stars who were in it at the time. These guys, they're good actors, but I wouldn't call these the thespian type actors outside of Tim Curry and Oliver Platt. Oliver Platt's actually done some pretty good. That would be, you'd expect to have the proper accents and everything like this. You were going into this particular version of the Three Musketeers for the sword fighting, the adventure, the fun of it, and it delivered on what it was supposed to be. If you were going into this film expecting the true translation of the book, what you weren't thinking. You were just not realizing. This was a holiday film with at the time, two of the biggest stars in the U.S. and one of the big up-and-coming stars in the U.S. and Tim Curry. Come on. Yeah. You had to go in knowing that this movie was just going to be meant to be fun and be a holiday fun movie to see.
Well, the other critics here aren't kind as well, and I seem to remember that critics in general were not a fan of this, but everyone that I talked to that's seen this film seems to enjoy it, and it's become a fan favorite, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking about it here on Couch Potato Theater. Chris O'Donnell was nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award as Worst Supporting Actor for his work, but he lost to Woody Harrelson in A Decent Proposal, so there you go. Video releases here. There were 2 scenes that were cut from the German cinema version to secure a not under 12 rating. The murder of the prisoners cut completely, and the death of the bald-headed man in prison at the end is shortened. The second DVD release is uncut, not under 16, but bears the note uncut version. Okay, guys, let's talk about one of the strong points of this film, and also was a thing of the 90s, still kind of is, but the 80s and the 90s really kind of perfected the soundtrack and that one big hit that had to accompany these movies. And of course, we had it with The Prince of Thieves. The soundtrack, of course, the music is by Michael Kamen, but we got to talk about All for Love. Of course, it was written by Mutt Lange, very, very famous record producer, worked with Def Leppard and many other hard rock stars, also worked with Shania Twain, married her, then divorced her, or maybe she divorced him, one of those things. But the song that we're talking about has got Rod Stewart, Sting, and Bryan Adams singing All for Love. This song was huge. The video was huge. Some people that might be engaged to me might think that the song is better than the movie and has outlasted the movie. What is your opinion, Hayley, on the soundtrack?
I really loved the soundtrack. I enjoyed it. I mean, the score for the film, this song, it was everywhere. I do remember that. I mean, even for years, I've got it in my iTunes. I know that. I really enjoyed it. I do like the soundtrack, and the score is really, really great. That opening scene, coming into underneath the castle, and the darkness of the music and the darkness of that scene really pairs well together. And you're just thinking, okay, this is not a lighthearted, there's some dark stuff going on in this movie. And so I think the music works really, really well. This song, I remember the music video because I was starting to get into watching MTV and VH1 and loved watching music videos. Man, I miss that. And I remember this didn't it have like scenes? They were singing and it had scenes from the movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. And that was so cool. Like, I remember thinking that was just really awesome that like, it wasn't just a music video of, them singing the song. It was, they pulled in scenes from the movie, and I thought that was fantastic. I love this
Kyle, Bryan Adams also worked on another film, Prince of Thieves.
Yes.
And were they trying to make him the new Kenny Loggins of the 90s, you think?
You just stole my thunder. Thank you, Mr. Reitzel, because I was about to say, this is the time when Bryan Adams decided he wanted to be the next Kenny Loggins, because he had done Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and that song was everywhere a couple of summers prior. Then he does this with Sting and Rod Stewart, and it was just that whole, for about 6 months, was on the top of the charts. Mm-hmm. And Kaylee, I'm glad you brought up the music video, because I remember the video too, because one of the things I remember about it was the three of them sitting at a table like they were in a pub. And what was really fun was they had all of their wives dressed up like they were wenches at the pub. And Kevin, who was Rod Stewart married to at this point? in one
a
of his
certain supermodel.
a certain supermodel named Rachel Hunter.
Yes. Yeah, she was also in Rockstar as well. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, so that made the video stand out as well. But I mean, the score works so well for this film. It has a good balance to it. And this was when Disney was really, really pumping out some really good scores and music for their films at the time.
I noticed in the beginning of the film, and I'm pretty sure this was done on purpose, where you see D'Artagnan riding to Paris, and I think it's Notre Dame you see in the back, but without the spires at the time. At least that's what the matte painting looked like. Mm-hmm. But as he's riding in there, you hear a instrumental version of "All for One" song, just briefly, and I thought that was really cool.
Excuse me, Mr. Reitzel. Did I perhaps just see something in your hand? Something that I used to own as well.
I told you I would have show and tell today, guys. So I was running some errands today before I was going to come here and do the podcast here in the studio here. And I decided to go by a thrift store, kind of see what they have. And I found something in the music section. Do you guys remember Casingles? Mm-hmm. I found the All for Love Three Musketeers Casingle, the cassette tape with just the song on it. But not only does it have the song on one side, it has the instrumental on the other side. And you know what? Okay, I can't play anymore because, anyway, stuff's going on. I'll let Kyle edit that out. But yes, it still works, by the way. A Casingle.
Yes, I owned a few of those back in the day, including that one that you have in your hands. It might have even been the one I owned for all we know.
It's funny, too, because it was like, when you pop it out, it's interesting because it doesn't have the plastic case around it. It's just a cassette with the paper around it, which is interesting.
The little kind of cardboard kind of cutout thing.
It cost me 30 cents.
You actually have something to play that, son? His name is Kevin Reitzel. Yes, he has every kind of media player in history.
You're right, I do, man. Yes.
Kevin, wait, do you own an 8-track? I just got to get that.
I do not own an 8-track. If I could have a portable 8-track and get some 8-tracks, I would get it. If I saw one working, I would get one.
We have a record player that's also got a CD player and a cassette player in it.
Nice. I got one of those as well. Yeah. So anyway, obviously a huge hit, made a lot of money, and also made Mutt Lange even richer. So there you go, along with the artists themselves. So let's talk about something else that's really cool about this film. Let's talk briefly about the filming locations. Most of the locations were filmed in Austria, with several in the UK, including Cornwall and a bunch of other areas. And I thought this was a really cool. I love when they actually go to Europe and they find a location and they film it there. It just totally adds to everything about the film. It's a second character, if you ask me. And I love the location shots in here. That one scene in, I think it's in Cornwall, the cliffs, where Rebecca De Mornay's character is going to be, she jumps to her death. Just a beautiful location there. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the filming locations, Hayley.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I could tell that they filmed in the UK because those were some awfully Tudor houses in Paris. Not gonna lie. I was like, oh, it's Tudor style homes. I'm pretty sure they didn't have those in France because they were enemies with England. The other thing that I think is really neat, and I didn't know this, so the dungeon scenes were actually filmed. And I might butcher this, but I'm going to try my best because I took German for quite a while. The Seegrote, Austria, which is an old mine, and it flooded. And I think this is the coolest thing ever. So now if I ever go to Austria, I want to go here. So I'm a big history buff. I love the World War II era type stuff, but the Nazis used this during World War II to conduct military research, but it's now open to the public, and it's famous for its underground lake. And they actually still have a scene decoration from one of the prison cells, as well as the Dragon Head boat, are still there, and you can visit them if you go.
I so want to do that.
I know. I do too. No, I think the filming locations worked really, really well. I think they did a fantastic job. I would not have known that they filmed it in Austria if I hadn't read that.
I didn't know, too, that it was shot mostly in, I'm going to butcher this, Purchasdorf, Austria, where Rebecca De Mornay actually attended high school and college. she
had a
was
home court
home,
advantage.
So
Yeah.
Yes. Kyle, I assumed you enjoyed the film.
Oh,
locations as well.
the scenery in this film is absolutely gorgeous. And one of my favorite scenes in the scenery in it is when they're having, it's the Musketeers and D'Artagnan right after he's supposed to duel with them, and then the Cardinal's minions show up, and the fight scene they have in that whole area where they have the fight scene. I just love the scenery there. And Kevin, as you said, when the Countess de Winter finally meets her fate, that's just a beautiful area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gorgeous location there. So we're going to take a little break here. We're going to let you know what else is happening on the other great podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to the Fandom Podcast Network and all of the other awesome shows we have to offer. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture news podcast. Bloody Kings, our Highlander podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite pop culture topics. End Zone, the NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s and 90s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a new Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can also find us on Facebook under Fandom Podcast Network. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to Couch Potato Theater. We're talking about the 1993 classic, The Three Musketeers. And as always, I'd like to have a little fun with some trivia here. Kiefer Sutherland, Chris O'Donnell, Oliver Platt all endured 6 weeks of fencing and riding lessons. However, Charlie Sheen missed out on all of this. He was then embroiled in the filming of Hot Shots Pots Du, 1993, that came out. And you'll notice that he frequently uses fisticuffs instead of his sword. This noticeably happens during the ship fight and the final battle where he's disguised as a ferryman. So he got a little pass there, not getting some fighting in there, Hayley.
You know, I wouldn't have noticed, and I probably still won't really ever fully pay attention to that, but it makes sense now if you kind of think about it. So
the other trivia thing is Disney wanted Robert Downey Jr. for a part. Kyle, what part do you think he would have been?
I think he would have been Porthos. I think that Oliver Platt is just such a weird casting when you go back and look at the time frame of everybody who was in this film. You know, Sutherland and Sheen were really, really high right there. A lot of people knew who Chris O'Donnell was. A lot of people were like, Oliver Platt? And I'm just, it seems like as Porthos's humor would have been something that Robert Downey Jr. would have handled very well.
Yeah, I think you're right. What do you think, Hayley? You think that would have worked?
yeah, I think that's really the only thing for the time frame for 93. That's really the only thing I could think of that he would be. I mean, maybe Aramis, but probably Porthos.
Yeah, good call. The throwing weapon with cords and weights that Porthos, Oliver Platt, uses to catch the guard during the fight at the convent is real. It's called bolas, or boladora, and was used by Patagonian gauchos in modern-day Argentina. As for the time of this movie, those weren't known in Europe. This could support Porthos's claim that of his many travels and adventures, despite generally being considered as fabricated. I just want to go on record here, say that, Porthos the pirate could have used a Porthos prequel film to come out a few years later. I'm just saying. Would you have liked to have seen that, Hayley?
Oh, that would have been great. Sure. Why not?
Yes. Ship full of wenches. There you go. Brad Pitt turned down the role of D'Artagnan. William Baldwin, Johnny Depp, Gary Oldman, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Cary Elwes, and Al Pacino were all sought out by Disney for parts of this film. Stephen Dorff turned down the role of D'Artagnan. Kyle, could you imagine Stephen Dorff in that?
To be honest with you, outside of Gary Oldman, because I think it would have been a different movie, but I think I'm assuming they would have probably had Gary Oldman playing the Cardinal. It would have made the movie much different, but none of these others would have been a fit. I think Cary Elwes would have been coming off Princess Bride and everything like that. It would just been, no, it wouldn't have been a good fit. And I think Chris O'Donnell actually is the perfect casting at the time for the D'Artagnan role, because he has an innocence about him that really helps with the naivety.
Innocence, but a little cockiness too, which
a little
kind of worked.
Yeah,
a little.
And I think
a lot of cockiness.
And I'm going to say this: Brad Pitt and Stephen Dorff at that point had too much already of a little bad boy image going on.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So,
well, what about this, Hayley? Winona Ryder was considered for the role of Countess de Winter. Do you think she could have played it? I don't know. I thought she was maybe a little too young.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
Yeah, I don't know on that.
I think Rebecca De Mornay was the perfect casting for that. She's a little bit older, but still has that sensuous to her. And I have a hard time seeing Winona Ryder as the seductress.
Yeah. The rival TriStar Pictures version was also in development at the time as this movie, with Johnny Depp and director Jeremiah Chechik attached. Ultimately, it fell through, though, and Oliver Platt had been approached to play Porthos in that version as well. Interesting, Chechik directed Platt in Tall Tale in 1995. In another movie, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, 1991, Michael Wincott also played a swordsman in the right-hand man to the antagonist. Michael Wincott appears in The Count of Monte Cristo, 2002, another movie based on Alexander Dumas. He is the warden of the Chateau d'If, in which the protagonist escapes. We talked about that. This is interesting. I didn't know about this. Gabrielle Anwar was pregnant during the filming and had to have her costumes let out a bit. Chris O'Donnell and Gabrielle Anwar also appeared in Scent of a Woman in 1992. The Countess de Winter, Rebecca De Mornay, jumps off the cliff. She became the first character in the movie released under the Walt Disney banner to commit suicide.
I seem to remember that was kind of a big deal at the time.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you this, Hayley. That surprised me. That I thought that maybe they might try to rescue her. I didn't know anything about this story. Mm-hmm. Seeing her just jump to her death like that actually really surprised me.
I think that, yes, it is surprising, and I'm sure I probably was at the time. Looking back on it now, I can honestly say I think it's something more of like, she knew that she was facing her death, and rather than, she kind of took it into her own hands. She said, I'm not going to have them, cut off my head and then throw my body over the cliff, and so in a way it was kind of her last chance to kind of have control over the situation. And especially where, they set it up where, Athos forgives her and, they essentially forgive each other. I think if they'd cut her head off of that, it kind of wouldn't have worked in that scene with what had happened just right before.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I think it works very much in this film. It was shocking. I remember being like, wow, they actually killed her off. But I think it works for the way the scene works. And they could have even gone with how it initially looked like it was set up where she was finally going to pay for her crimes. But I think it works because you also have a scene slightly when Athos first catches her talking about how she can control her fate somewhat. And right. I think it reflects onto that as well. So, yeah.
After filming, Chris O'Donnell kept his sword. He jokingly claims that this was by accident. Kyle, you're working on a multi-million-dollar film. You're playing one of the heroes. You have some cool toys. You going to try and keep something?
Oh, absolutely. How many blasters or stuff, or how many guys have accidentally kept their lightsaber?
Kyle, I think Hayley would also keep a sword if she had a sword.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
What I'm thinking, though, is actually Hayley's going to keep the phaser.
Nah, that too.
Now, we mentioned Cary Ellis. He was considered for one of the roles into casting, and he appeared in a pre-production interview from New York's Planet Hollywood with Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland that broke on E! So I don't know what happened, but what role do you think that he could have been in? And would that have been weird to see him, or cool to see him in another film with swords and stuff after The Princess Bride? What do you think, Hayley?
I think it would have been weird a little bit, but at the same time, it could have worked depending on who they put him as. I mean, I could see it either way. I could see him being Athos. I could see him being Porthos. I could see him being Aramis. I mean, really, if you're coming off Princess Bride and kind of in that mentality of who his character was in that
knows
film,
how to use a sword.
Yeah, but he really could have been any one of those three. I don't think he would have been D'Artagnan, but I think he really could have been any one of those three and played either role really well.
Kyle?
I think at this point, this is when, because that's one of the other trivia that we had, was Charlie Sheen was originally sought for the role of Porthos. I'm wondering if the three of them, Charlie Sheen was kind of going to play the Porthos role, with Cary Elwes playing the Aramis role, and then they switched it up when because Cary Elwes stands out too much with those other two.
Yeah,
I think he's too clean.
Could he have played Rochefort like a villain?
You can't. He was too typecast.
Too nice. Yeah,
it would have been different and it could have been fun.
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys about a sequel. Now, we've talked about a lot of the other productions, different productions of Three Musketeers, but if this movie had done a lot better, maybe better reviewed, I had joked, well, kind of serious, that I would love to have seen a prequel to Porthos, but do you think that we could have seen a sequel? And if so, where would you have liked to have seen it gone? Hayley?
I don't know if I would wanted a sequel. I think if I consider it, it could definitely work. It could be fun. It could be enjoyable. And I would say maybe, like a couple years after. So, D'Artagnan's kind of gotten some of his, arrogance kind of knocked off of him a little bit. And, France at this point was fighting with England quite frequently, so there could have been some other type of situation with that going on. It could have worked.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle? What do you think?
I don't know if a sequel would have been a great idea, but however, I do think Disney was, as Disney always does sometimes put the franchise idea in their heads. And I think what they would have done is they would have made this a franchise for Chris O'Donnell. You might have not had the other three back, or maybe only one or two of them, because it wasn't shortly after this that Charlie Sheen started getting a little weird for the first go around.
Yeah.
So I think you could have probably gotten Oliver Platt back to make a guest appearance. I'm pretty sure you could have gotten Kiefer back to make a guest appearance. But with the way the movie did, but I think Disney kind of had some hopes if this was going to do well, it would become a franchise type thing for Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah.
And I think too, when we look, Chris O'Donnell's got such an interesting career and how it's gone for him, because a lot of people initially thought some big things for him, and I'm not going to say it hasn't been a unsuccessful career. It's just been a little bit more sideways than I think a lot of people saw for him when he was first hitting it in the early 90s.
Yeah. I like the fact that it kind of just stands on its own. It's a one deal, one and done, and it makes it extra special. It's funny too, because it was one of those films to first pop up on Disney Plus of the large variety, And it's nice that that's option there as well. But it just stands alone as just a good story. It's a good family story as well. It's not, it's PG or PG-13, and it's got obviously good music and just a lot of fun. So real quick, though, I did find out that there was a Marvel Comics adaptation, Disney's The Three Musketeers, that came out in January of 1994, a few months after the movie. But I went to social media and I asked our friends to comment on how this movie stands with them and what their thoughts are. And we got a lot of really cool comments here. My friend Leanna Furlong says, my favorite is always going to be Oliver Platt, hands down. And my friend Lacey says, the sash was a gift from the Queen of America. And of course, we all love that quote as well. William J., one of my friends in the finest, says, my favorite version of the Musketeers. Monica, my friend Monica, says, please read the book. It's so much better than this movie. Charlie Sheen as Aramis is, well, and she puts little making sick emojis and stuff. I think with most fans, he's probably maybe the least favorite. Is that fair to say, Hayley?
I would think so. Mm-hmm.
What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I would agree. I think he also had the smallest part of the three.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. I had commented saying I can't strictly compare movies to the books if I'm going to enjoy movies anymore. It's tough to do, but I like to separate the two and enjoy them for what they are. But it's tough to do when the book is so legendary. Adam Harris says the soundtrack is awesome. My buddy Chris Sharp said, this movie was my introduction to Oliver Platt, or at least my awareness of him. I actually really enjoyed him in Flatliners, but I don't think I saw it until after I'd seen The Three Musketeers. I remember thinking, wow, they got Kiefer, they got Charlie Sheen. Why couldn't they get someone famous to play the third Musketeer? I couldn't have been more wrong. He was perfect. I had seen Lost Boys, Young Guns, and especially Men at Work and Cadence way too many times. Thanks, Showtime. Special shout out to All for Love by Stewart, Sting, Adams, and You Can't Beat That Combo. I remember this film being repeated a lot on television and stuff. Kyle, you had a comment?
Yeah, no, it's a great observation about Oliver Platt, because I was the first time I really got introduced to Oliver Platt, and I know it was for a lot of other people as well.
Yeah. Hayley, what do you think about what he said?
No, I think so. I think that's great. I didn't know much of Oliver Platt at the time. And, later as I've watched movies and he's popped up in things, I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, it's the guy who played Porthos.
What else we have? Sorry, go ahead.
And it works.
Yes. David Walsh said, still the best telling of this story. Matthew Clifton, of course, said, yes, it's perfect. The 90s Young Guns. I think it was it Leonard Maltin? Who was it that said that referred to it as Young Blades? If I remember correctly. Who said it here? Leonard Maltin christened the film Young Swords, Young Swords, as it reunited Sheen and Sutherland, both from Young Guns fame. Clifton said, and the cherry on top, Tim Curry as the evil Cardinal. Mic drop. And then bonus points for having Michael Wincott as a secondary film. Chris Burke said he loved this film. Jason Benyon said, this is my favorite film version of the story. I know many cinephiles would think that this is blasphemous, but I far prefer it to Richard Lester's version from the 70s. Lester's humor doesn't click with me. This one is simply fun, especially Oliver Platt's Porthos. This is funny what he said. I was a projectionist when this came out, and I still have a scar on my hand from when I knocked it bit into the machinery while I was swinging my imaginary blade around while listening to the trailer. Jason, that is awesome. I love that. He has a scar from the Three Musketeers. Scott said, this is a great version of the Dumas story. Charlie Sheen was great. Kiefer was epic. And Rebecca De Mornay is just kissy emoji in this flick. Adam Mark Leonard says, I realize this version takes a lot of liberties from the novel, but I don't care. This is my favorite film adaptation and the most comedic version. And the soundtrack, what a great theme song. When it came out, I was going through a Bryan Adams phase after Kevin Costner's Robin Hood film. Plus, the Queen and her handmaidens are cute. Or handmaiden are cute. James Razzo said, this is my favorite as a kid. I'd watch it every day, sometimes twice. Rick Peralta said, I watched it again last week. Buddy Todd Soper said, my favorite iteration. Also, they hooked the 3 most raspy male artists that they could find to record the theme song, and it's awesome. Do you think that was done on purpose?
I think
Maybe.
Yeah. I think getting those, I think they wanted 3 big musicians for
Yeah.
that, to have the three tie-in.
Yeah. My co-host on Blood at Kingsley filling this chimed in. He says, worst D'Artagnan ever, best Porthos ever, good Athos and Aramis, great Rochefort, although Christopher Lee is the high water mark, as in Charlton Heston as Richelieu. I think of this movie as young swords. Adam O'Brien also liked this film. Mike Freeman says, the sash was given to me by the Queen of America. I wonder how many times we could just say that in a crowd somewhere and someone would get that. Ryan was funny. He said, this was the first thing I watched. This is my buddy Ryan Stanfley. He said, the first thing I watched on Disney Plus might have been, other than like a Star Wars thing, you know, for me, it was the second thing probably, but I watched The Black Hole. That was the first thing that I watched. Cause Kyle, I think you told me it was on there.
Yeah. I think I watched this was within the first 3 things I watched on, as far as movies go on Disney Plus. So
Ryan Stanfley quoted again saying, it's proof the wrong films get the Oscars. I like that.
So true.
Carl Nordstrom, our friend, says, if this movie was produced in this day and age, it would have been lined up and written with a franchise in mind. I am glad it was not. As a standalone, it was everything the Pirates of the Caribbean series strived to become in a film. Both Adam O'Brien and Ryan agreed with that. Adam said this is the young gun of the Musketeers, and he likes that one from what is it? The Musketeer. Actually, did I see the Musketeer? Did you ever see the Musketeer, Kyle?
I think I saw it on cable. It wasn't that bad of a movie. There was actually some really good fight sequences in that film.
I think I did see it. Yeah, definitely. Of course, we got a shout out to the villain played by Michael Wincott by Mark Webber. Here's a good one here. Roy Murray said, without a doubt, my favorite version of the Musketeers. The trio put on a great show. Chris O'Donnell has a lot of grueling dueling scenes, and Tim Curry steals the show, though he's amazing. My friend Michael had not seen it. I told him you better see it. My friend Beth said, I used to watch this constantly when it first came out on VHS. I recently watched it again, and now it's on Disney Plus, and I'm happy to say it has held up over time. Also, Athos is the sexiest of them all. Haley. She made a good point. Yes, he is the sexiest of them all. No, I'm just what I mean is it has held up, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it does. I think this movie holds up. Like I said, I showed this to my kid just a few years ago. I have it on DVD and I enjoy watching it. I think it's a great film when you just want to sit down and you want to kind of have a little bit of swashbuckling fun and enjoy a fun story.
Yeah, definitely. My buddy Mike says, loved Porthos the Pirate. God, now I really want a pirate movie with him. Kyle, can we make that happen? I want that to happen. Did you guys like Flatliners? Because Jamie Rosenberg said Oliver Platt, Kiefer Sutherland, Flatliners, great movie. Haley, did you see Flatliners?
I've never seen that one. Mm-mm.
Kyle, what about you?
It was average for me. If you want to talk about Oliver Platt outside of this movie, one of my favorite performances is him in the movie Digstown, where he plays James Woods' kind of artist sidekick.
Yeah, definitely. Buddy James Floyd said this is such a great movie, and of course, Jennifer Walk said one word: adorable. So I want to thank everyone for commenting. This was a lot of fun talking about the Three Musketeers, the Disney version. Let's get our final thoughts on this. Kyle, you have one more thing you want to say?
Kevin, we've talked about all these different versions of the Three Musketeers, and yet we've probably ignored the most iconic one.
Oh, please.
This would be the 1971 West German produced, directed by Erwin C. Dietrich, The Sex Adventures of the Three Musketeers.
I have missed that one. Can you send me the Amazon link? I'll go check that out.
It was a raunchy comedy. I actually remember hearing about this on HBO like way back in the early 80s when HBO was just struggling to put anything.
Are you getting HBO confused with Skinamax?
No, not at that point. Cinemax wasn't even around at that point, but I remember seeing an ad or something for it, and I'm just like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to let you know that Hayley's blushing for both of us right now.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that opens a rabbit hole, but we're not going to go there.
All right, guys, let's wrap this up. Let's reminisce. Let's give our final thoughts about this very fun 1993 film version of the Three Musketeers. The hottest young stars at the time, awesome director as well, shot on location, great sword fights, very underrated to a certain degree. Kyle, what say you?
I love this movie. This is one of these movies that no matter what mood I'm in, if I'm come across it or I need it, it puts me in a good mood watching it. It's fun. It's adventurous. Disney really did a great job in making this a family film and making this a film, like you said, Kevin, holds up incredibly well. And you know what? Say what you will about anybody in the cast, because they've all had a little bit of weirdness in their careers, but they came together with this and just made such a fun and perfect couch potato theater film.
Well said. Hayley, what are your thoughts on this?
I think this is really fun. If you haven't watched it, or it's been a long time since you've watched it, you need to watch this now or revisit this, just because it is such a good, fun film. It's a 90s film that I think, we've been watching a lot of 90s television and this year so far. And there's just something about this time frame where, 80s movies were weird for kids. 90s movies were fantastic. I think there was a lot of really great storytelling going on. The combination of actors usually worked and meshed really well. And you just had something that was really, really, just really enjoyable. And I think the whole family can sit down and watch this and get something out of it and enjoy it and laugh. And we all need that right now. And I've got nothing else to say except for I've got to go take care of something ugly.
You guys have said that well. This is definitely a fun film. And Hayley, you made a great point about the 90s. 90s were a great decade for films, also all types of films. Even, you got your great gangster films, you got your great sci-fi films, you got your romantic comedies, then you got your family adventure films. There's a lot of those, and this was definitely one of them. And, I don't care if they don't, speak French or, have the right accent or whatever, and visually this was fun. The writing was fantastic. The settings, the sword fights, it was just I didn't feel like they kind of really chinced on anything else, other than not being able to speak perfect French and be that way. But that's not what this movie was intended to be, And, there's many, many films that break those rules that are also a lot of fun and maybe not so fun. But this one was, and everyone that I talked to about this film, no one says, "Oh, I didn't like it. It wasn't fun." Maybe they liked other versions better, but this one was still a fun film. And this was the height of my theater attendance. Late 80s and 90s, and this is when I was really getting into film and learning how films were made, where they were filmed, directors behind the scenes. And it's funny, though, how I went to go see this film originally because of Charlie Sheen, because of the main actors in this film, that Kiefer Sutherland and Chris O'Donnell. But Oliver Platt, to me, he's the hero of this film, and of course Tim Curry as the villain, both stand out great. So anyway, Hayley, thank you so much for coming on with this. I was so happy that you wanted to do this.
Oh, thank you, and I'm so glad that you guys want to do this as well.
Kyle, got another one done, man. When you asked me to join this funky Fandom Podcast Network years ago, I knew we were nerdy brothers when it came to certain films, and this one definitely falls under that.
Yeah, Kevin, just realized I will never defend the honor of your sister.
Well, all for one,
and one for all.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time, we will see you on the couch.